Hello, welcome to the Bear Chocky T's wrestling recap. So, in our last episode, we stated that the AEW Blood and Guts event wouldn't be justice by squeezing it into a 5-10 minute recap. So that's why we decided on our previous show that we would do a special looking at the event itself. Not just that, but also some of the reactions from the world of wrestling, as well as our own. So we can't have an episode by myself, so I'd like to introduce you to my awesome co-host, the Cash Wielder, sorry, to my Dax Howard, Big Jocky T. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really, really good, thank you. It's been a really, really good week of wrestling. Obviously, as we're recording this on the Sunday, we just had Impact Under Siege, which was fantastic. However, I'm not going to spoil anything because obviously there's repeats and it's only just been on. But I urge you to go watch it because it's fantastic and it sets up some really, really good things for the future for not only Impact but also AEW as well. So, but before we get into the nitty-gritty of the AEW Blood and Guts event, we'd like to let you know about the Johners Podcasting Network. This network features a group of diverse and talented podcasters bringing you interviews, recaps and reviews, as well as watch-alongs and specials such as this, because we're on there as well. So check out the whole network at wrestlingwithjohners.com. We'll put the link in our description so you can find it with ease. And that's unfortunately it's normally me that talks most of the time, but I'd like to hand over the reins to my tag team partner for this AEW Blood and Guts special. So there you go, Big Chocky T.
Thank you very much, Michael. Yeah, thank you for the intro. Yeah, Blood and Guts. We always said we wanted to do it like justice, really. And what really made us think about doing this episode was the quite diverse fan reaction that came of it as a result. Me personally, I know, Johnny, you were a little surprised that this. So just before we get into it, were you like me, quite surprised at the reaction that Blood and Guts got in general?
Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the main event itself, but I'm actually really surprised with what the reaction, especially with the company that we may delve into in a little bit, especially with what they've been going on before. We've had the whole, it's okay that we've had people, we've had wrestlers saying that they loved it, but then we've also had management say that they hated it and it was knocking it back 30 years. But this is from a company that sets people on fire, sets people, possesses people, has women running around a ring and slipping, having the Usos. Sorry, because that's going to be the spoiler here. Having the Usos, diluting water to make formerly the former FTR group have itchy bums and stuff like that. Yet you're going to sit there and on one hand, you've got the justice of doing that while you've got people bleeding tar from the face, and you're going to sit there and complain about somebody. Yes, the camera angle could have been a lot better, but ultimately, Chris Jericho's come off with an injury, and it's wrestling. If you are watching wrestling, you know what wrestling is. If you are watching wrestling to complain and say, this is rubbish, then you shouldn't be watching the show because everyone knows what wrestling is. So, yeah.
I agree completely. So the first thing to come out in his defense is that the fact that it wasn't a paid pay-per-view. This was a free TV special. But interestingly, the original announcement for a Blood and Guts match was 14 months ago. And our good old friend COVID-19 put paid to that. So original announcement was going to be the Elite versus the Inner Circle, which is very different to how things have turned out. We all know the Elite became quite fractured after that, and arguably, yes, they're back together now in some form. But the Inner Circle themselves has obviously been through a massive change. Now, they became faces by default after MJF's long-term plan to infiltrate and then break the Inner Circle kind of came to fruition. Now, we all saw that coming, but I don't think what we saw coming was the formation of the Pinnacle as well, to kind of rival the Inner Circle as the main faction in AEW. So this was a great match for it. It would have been nice to have the Elite versus the Inner Circle, but this ultimately has paid off better, I think, because of the personal stakes, the rivalry between MJF and Jericho, and the long-term storytelling that they could put behind it, which arguably perhaps the Inner Circle and Elite did not have. So Emanated from Daly's Place in Jacksonville, of course, the home of AEW. This was in front of a partial crowd, which really added to the atmosphere, and it actually became the #1 viewed cable TV show that night, which is something that AEW were very proud of, and rightly so. That's the first time that's happened for them, and they set a record number of viewers for the night. So there was certainly no shortage of hype coming into Blood and Guts. I think everyone knew what to expect because, you know, if we're fans, we've probably seen a War Games match at some point. Now, they call it War Games because I assume that's a WWE trademark, much as Cody Rhodes. But yeah, so Blood and Guts, it's okay. I'm not a huge fan of that name per se, but you know, it did what it said in the tin. And this was a continuation of special Dynamite episodes such as Beach Break, St. Patrick's Day Slam, New Year's Smash, and Winter is Coming. So not a pay-per-view, but you could argue the matches themselves were of a pay-per-view quality. So, you know, again, in AEW's defense, that's not the first time they've put on free content that arguably people would have paid for. So in terms of specials, this is unbelievably the 22nd special theme show they've done in their short run, although some were more like anniversaries and the tribute to Brody Lee, you know, I'm counting that as well. The main draw of the match, as we've already said, was the two cage kind of setup. It's a close. If you don't know, if you've never seen War Games, it's two cages and two rings, but one kind of interconnecting structure with a roof on it as well. So if you've ever seen a Hell in a Cell match, something like that, imagine that with two rings. And in general, very little rules, but typically the rules would involve the contestants going in one at a time, with one team having the advantage. And I think every 5 minutes, possibly, they had someone go in. So that's the kind of setup for it. We know that people have already discussed it in great detail. So really what I wanted to talk about was this, but also just a rundown of the other stuff on that night's show, because this wasn't a one-off. The match didn't cover the whole event. It did take place in the second hour, with the first hour being taped. So the live fans in attendance, interestingly, were watching the first hour of matches on the big video screen. And that's also part of the controversy that's been mentioned about the fans in attendance and what they got to see on the night. But the second hour was completely live and recorded there in front of that audience. So just to run down what was on the on the card on the night, Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall had a bit of a kind of blow-off match, you know, their feud boiling up to this point. Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston took on Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa in a kind of ongoing feud, which bit of a nothing match, really. I think we all knew that Nakazawa was going to take the fall there. And then this was better a four-way match between the Acclaimed, SCU, Jurassic Express, and Varsity Blondes, with a shot at the Young Bucks tag team title at stake. We'll get into who won that match and the fallout of that. But also some good promos. And I quite like the kind of promo time they had, because in front of a crowd, Kenny Omega and Cassidy promo was great, but better was the Miro program. Third time lucky. Where he has got some real energy about him sometimes, Miro, and a real intensity. And he'd already delivered the "you got a title, you got a problem" previously, but I really like that. I think it's a really snappy thing, and we'll also discuss, you know, what was next for Miro. So, you know, back to my point, Jolly, you know, considering this was a free event on TV, you've got to give respect to AEW for putting this out as free content, I think.
I mean, as you've just brought up the whole thing of the refunds for the disappointed fans, the fact that they've actually stepped forward and gone, look, it isn't what you were expecting. We're really, really sorry. We'll offer refunds to anyone that wants it. I think that's a bold move. That's something to show, look, we may not have advertised exactly what we needed and what we were going to do, but if you've walked in expecting something and not getting what you were expecting out of it, then I think them to turn around and say, look, if you want your money back, then fine. It's not a problem. I think that's a way to, as I said, it's a way to say, look, we didn't deliver what you were expecting. So if you're unhappy with what the outcome was, then we're sorry. And I give I tip my hat to that for them. The event itself was actually, I really, really enjoyed it as a free event on a weekly show. I mean, as you said, we've had numerous. I can't believe how many they've done. Like you just brought up, that's That's incredible. And as you said, it might have just been a slight name change for the Dynamite episode, but every time that they did one, it always felt special. It wasn't just it's a weekly episode. It felt like if you want to call it a mini pay-per-view.
Yes.
Because they were putting on the best. I mean, don't get me wrong, they put on the best every week, but it just feels that every time that they put on a named Dynamite show, they step up that level a little bit more, especially when they were doing the whole headbutting with NXT.
Yeah.
Which we saw for quite a number of weeks there. But yeah, as you said, which we'll get into it. I thought, as I said, the main one for me was the show itself was fantastic. I thought it was really, really good. We've openly said on this we don't like to criticise. We want to be a positive podcast, but obviously we can't not dismiss stuff that we think is wrong or we think could have been done better. Every week we could watch wrestling, and there is every show you watch, no matter whether it's Impact, New Japan, AEW, WWE, you can sit there after it and go, if we'd have done this better, it'd have been a lot smoother. There's never going to be, you'll always have someone, or you yourself could sit there and say, we could have tweaked that a little bit better. For me, I think the camera angle for the main event, yes, it didn't come across well. However, as we talked on the previous episode, he did drop a fair few feet.
Yes.
And when I say a few, I mean, what is it, 30?
Yeah. And look at the pictures that will come out that we've seen after. It's a spectacular image, isn't it?
Yeah.
It did impact, in still motion. It looked very, very impactful. So yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. And the fact that he's land. Yes, you could sit there and go, oh well, it's cardboard, or oh well, it's mats underneath. Okay, and so what? It's wrestling. It's not as if you're going to watch a boxing match or a football match. Everyone going into it, as I said at the beginning of the show, everyone knows what to expect. You don't go to watch a paper. You don't go to watch a Hell in a Cell. You don't go to watch a blood and guts match. Yes, they might have gone a bit overboard with naming it blood and guts. I get that. I understand that, but it's something that stands out that people would then be invested in. Because if you just call it a weekly Dynamite show with 2 rings in it, people are just going to be, yeah. Or it's an angle to latch onto. But the fact that he's landed on the mat, and it was only one set of mats. Don't get me wrong. It's not as if he landed on concrete and he didn't land on like 19 mats high. He landed on, in essence, what would have been 2 gym mats from school. And the only bit of safety he had from hitting that floor was them 2 mats and a very, very, very thin piece of cardboard. Or even wood, if you want to call it balsa wood, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, he still came out. Jericho still took that fall. So we all know, we've all seen it before, what happens when people drop from a great height and it goes tits up.
Yes, yeah.
And the fact that he's hit the floor and he's come out with a separated elbow. Now, I found that out a couple of nights ago, and I was just like, that's not one thing that I would want as a separated elbow. But the fact that he was on next week's Dynamite, which, as you said, we'll talk about later on, people might have sat there and gone, oh, he's playing up the injury. And he isn't. That is exactly. He has to keep his arm like that because that elbow needs to sit in place. And if anyone's ever had an injury or at school or through sports or anything like that, they'll know exactly how hard it is to get back to doing what they're doing. But yeah, as I said, overall, it was fantastic. It was a fantastic show. Everyone got a little bit. I loved Ollie, as you said. I loved the Miro bit. I loved the Kenny Omega with Orange Cassidy promo. I love the fact that they brought Britt Baker in. Yes, she had a squash match, but it built her up. So what she's going to be doing next. You had obviously the tag matches, which was all really, really good. So yeah, as I said, other than maybe a little bit of camera angle work that they could have done better, I've got nothing to I know I'm going to say I've got nothing to complain about because I've just complained about it, but that's not going to make me turn around and go, well, I'm put off by it now. We've seen much worse from companies that have been running for way longer that should know better to do a certain way. So yeah, as I said, I'm happy with the outcome, and from what's coming from it, I'm really excited for what's coming next. So yeah.
Yeah, no, good analysis. Like, there's so many things to pick up on there. What you said, like, yeah, first of all, Jericho's what 50 something, if not nearly 50, and he's taken a big fall there. He said himself that it was very close to actually hitting his head on the lights that were not too far away from where he actually fell on the impact zone. And yes, again, like the camera angle, when you saw it, it kind of looked like a bit hokey where it landed, but we've seen this in WWE. How many times have we seen falls from the stage or from the Titantron where they fall onto like what's clearly like a padded kind of mat? We all knew that was going to happen like that. There was no, of course, he's not going to take a fall any other way. It's a shame because the finish itself, I really like that because to again fill people in. You had to submit as a team, or at least one of you, I suppose, or surrender. And, in that match, the main intrigue was how are they going to get to this point? We all probably knew no one was going to surrender individually, and we all knew the finish wouldn't come until everyone was in the ring, or on top in this case. So it was really clever. It extended the feud and it allowed MJF to come as a complete bastard, which he's so good at, and it showed compassion for the face team by having the inner circle say, please don't kill him, which is very realistic, actually, if you think about that. They weren't going to let him be thrown off. And of course he did it anyway. So in a way, it was the ideal finish. I couldn't have probably written a better finish myself, really.
Yeah, it cements MJF as the person that he said he were always going to be. It's that whole thing of I'm sacrificing somebody, you submit and I'll let go, and then I'll just still go.
Yeah, it was great. It was like in a film, like it was a proper villain move, and I think we all knew he was probably going to get thrown off, but Jericho didn't have to be the one to take that fall. Sammy's taken enough falls. And speaking of Sammy, as you alluded to, we all saw what happened to Matt Hardy in his fight with Sammy Guerrero at a previous pay-per-view where he was legitimately knocked loopy. And everyone criticised AEW for being unsafe then and letting the match continue. And there was a lot of criticism of Hardy's battle with Sammy. So the last thing they probably wanted to do was repeat that. So they're damned either way. This time you could argue they've gone too safe, but look what happened last time. He fell from this platform, cracked his head, and it was horrible. No one actually wants to see that, so you're kind of damned either way. But what was legit was the amount of cuts and bruises. We may have seen Sammy Guerrero's photos on his Instagram. He looked messed up. So did FTR. And yeah, my only criticism of, and this is true of a lot of matches like this, is that they came back next week when I would have liked to have maybe been off TV again for another week, nursing their injuries. The first time the Inner Circle were taken out, they were off television for a very little while, and that was key. But even going back to Shane McMahon versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania, he was back the next night after falling off the cell, and I think that was my only. Yes, like Jericho, yeah, it looked good because his arm was legitimately done in. So, but yeah, I think that was my only criticism of, and we'll get back to this, but yeah, the fact that I'm not a big fan of people coming out, after such a beating necessarily, it doesn't really sell it for me. But you have to carry on the feud. And we're so close to the next match, which will be coming at Double or Nothing, at a Stadium Stampede match. They don't have time, I think, to probably get them off television in this case. But yes, a lot of legit kind of injuries, a lot of great work. And it's another match, just like at the end of Revolution with the exploding barbed wire death match. It's another match that people, unfortunately, are going to focus more on the finish than the actual match, which was terrific. And in both cases, the rest of the match was perfectly fine. And it's a real shame that we live in a society where people are, I'm going to boycott AEW now because they protected someone's head from falling off a cage. So he took the bump, he jumped, didn't he? So anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too much into that. So
yeah, sorry to jump in, as you've just said, if it was one of those a cinema match, like the Stampede one, if it was one of those where you saw the shot of him, he got pushed off, and then it was cut, and then it showed you him on the floor, then they'd still criticise that because it's like you've just and it, like the whole thing of he didn't actually fall, he just leaned back like that, and then they took the shot again. As you've just said a couple of minutes ago, you're damned either way. There's always going to be somebody or a group of people that go, well, that looked fake, or that didn't look legit, or they could have done it like this, and you couldn't. And it's like, well, just give them a break. Come on,
Yeah.
it's as we all know, we're all old enough to know that it's entertainment. If you want to see a legit sport, go watch MMA.
Yeah. Yeah. Go watch MMA.
If you want to see blood and guts, go see that. If you want to watch something that's entertaining, then watch wrestling, which is what we do, and which is why we watch wrestling.
Yeah.
But as you said, and you're rightly so, the whole boycotting of one company over, and I know we talk about Impact, and I know we talk about AEW, but ultimately we like all wrestling no matter what. Okay, so we're not one of these that, even though we do this podcast, we're not saying that it's because we don't like somebody else. It's just that we like AEW and Impact. We're enjoying that more at the moment with what it's fresh, it's different. So that's why we want to talk about it instead of something that 90% of podcasters are talking about the other stuff. Because why would you want to listen to ours if 90% of the others are talking about the exact same thing? So we just wanted to be a little bit different, which is why we get on so well with each other and with what we're doing, and obviously with what we watch, because we both love the sport. We're both old enough to know, look, yeah, it shouldn't have done that, or yes, they should have said they shouldn't have done this, they shouldn't have done that, or it'd be nice. It's nice to see that being done. So, yeah, as I said, it's as you rightly say, you're damned either way.
It's a live TV. Let's not forget that. Mistakes happen, but this wasn't even a mistake. Everything went as planned. The barbed wire exploding, definitely, yeah, you could argue that was a disappointing finish, and I don't know if something had gone wrong, but it wasn't what it should have been. This one, everything went as it planned. You can't say that it wasn't well rehearsed and it didn't go exactly right. And if someone had, they would have been damned either way. So I think, I want to move on to what we were saying about not just like fans' reactions to it, which we will get into, but talent and kind of other companies. I'm going to, hopefully you've got them here. I've got one of them. If not, I want to talk about two different tweets from two different talents here.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about. I'm going to say Shayna Blazer, that quote, if you have that to hand. If not, I have that quote. That's fine.
Go ahead. I'll let you have that.
Okay, sure. So this is more of a negative one. So this is WWE's talent, of course. To quote, we don't actually want a village to be burned by a dragon in Game of Thrones. If they did that, that would be really bad. But if the special effects would have been garbage, it would have sucked also, and everyone would have said so. So that's her opinion on that finish. Again, I see what she's saying. Yes, bad effects would ruin the show for me, and they have done like cheap or poor CGI, But again, the difference with that is you have time to look at that and review it. It's not a live show. And then hopefully you can move me over to the more positive tweet you've got there.
Yeah, I've got it from former Damien Sandow of WWE, who is currently with NWA, Aaron. So he's wrote, his tweet states, I heard someone said that AEW Blood and Guts match set the business back 30 years. 1, it was awesome. 2, considering what some companies are putting out there, 30 years back would be a vast improvement.
There you go.
And that is from somebody that has come from WWE to NWA. Now, there was quite... obviously, the person I'm talking about is, if you're looking on Twitter, it's Aaron Thoughts. And as I said, it's Damien Sandow, former WWE talent. That was posted at 3:50 p.m. on the 11th of May, this past Tuesday, as we're recording this. So if you find that, go down the tweets, because he actually does reply to a lot of people that post stuff, as in like, but what did you think of this, and how did you feel this? And he actually is open and states, yes, this could have been done well, or I'm actually happy with this, or, and he actually has some background. He isn't just saying that was rubbish because it's AEW. That was brilliant because it's NWA. He's actually got some knowledge for why, he's got some backing for why he's talking about stuff, instead of just having, and I know we all state that the worst thing is social media is for everyone to have an opinion. Everyone can have an opinion, but not everyone should have one to voice it. But he actually talks quite in depth about a lot of stuff regarding not just that, but just, the whole business of 30 years. As I said, he talks about stuff from 30 years ago. If we'd have gone back to 30 years ago, we had people getting smacked over the head with chairs, cleanly,
Yeah.
concussions. We had people being split up, and we had the infamous Cactus Jack Triple H Royal Rumble match. It was almost in your contract at that point, whether you were with WCW or whether you were with then WWF. If you do bleed, you work for us. If you don't bleed, you don't work for us. And yeah, again, the whole infamous Stone Cold Blood 316, where he was facing Bret Hart with Ken Shamrock, where he bled out. The really bad match between JBL and Eddie Guerrero, where Eddie Guerrero cut a bit too deep on his eyelid, on his eye, and it was very, very bad. Yeah, this is my negativity towards. I don't, again, as I said, we don't like being negative, but this is my thing of, it was okay to do it then, and they've done it for one spot in one weekly free match on TV, and the negativity from certain people is just, there's no need, especially with what's going on at the moment. It's just entertainment. And as I said, from like Shayna Baszler saying what she did, yes, you could look at it and go, look, she's coming from an MMA fighting style, but look at what storyline she's going through at the moment with Nia Jax. It's horrendous. It's awful. But then you've also got her saying that, what this other company's done is just basically rubbish. And it's just like, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to stand up for one, you can't then diss the other if you're doing the exact same thing. I know it's not exactly the same, but if the storylines are not balanced, you can't be negative on one and okay on the other. You've got to be negative on both or okay on both. But yeah, I thought that was quite nice of the former Damien Sandow saying, look, things happen, but it's not as bad as people go on about. It's okay.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, no, it's really interesting to hear like both of those opinions on it. We all know that WWE, is a lot safer than it used to be, and it's interesting the points you make there about Eddie Guerrero, Steve Austin, Bret Hart, and famously, okay, so let's take the example of Mick Foley. Yes, he was also thrown off a table in a planned spot. What wasn't planned was his exit through the top of the cell in their famous Hell in a Cell match. Now that wasn't planned, so you could argue that that became iconic, but it certainly wasn't planned. Eddie Guerrero's too deep blade job or cut, that wasn't planned. So because those things resulted in more of an impact and quite a violent moment, they seem to have lived on in infamy. Now, AEW, it could have gone horribly wrong as well. Jericho could have hit the back of his head, but now it seems they would be criticised. So you could look back in that Mick Foley film and go, that wasn't supposed to happen. Is that something that's made that match iconic? Absolutely. But it wasn't supposed to happen either. So by trying to recreate a famous moment, but also do it safely, you're down both ways, aren't you? WWE's a very safe product these days, and I think there was enough legitimate blood shed in blood and guts to justify it. And lest we forget, this was on a cable show. All right, it was probably after the watershed in America, but it wasn't a pay-per-view either. So there's probably a certain line that they felt that they couldn't cross, on national TV, that maybe they could have crossed in pay-per-view land, where basically you could do what you want within reason. AEW, they've not shied away from like blood and violence, but they also aren't a kind of death match. They're not a GCW, they're nothing like CZW, they're nothing like that. They found a niche that's slightly more adult than WWE, but we're not crossing over into that ultra violent territory either. So there's a fine line that they walk on to protect their talent and make it legit as well, isn't it? So it's really interesting to hear that. So let's talk a little about what some of the other promotions have said about it. I know WWE said it back 30 years. You've explained that a little, but to hear that they are, I suppose, that interested in the counter programming is quite flattering, I would say, for AEW. It shows that people are watching, and I don't. If they're talking about the violence, well, there's an argument that blood, maybe that much blood shouldn't be shed on TV. But like you said, the audience of AEW, I think, is a little older, perhaps, and perhaps that's what they want. So, it's an interesting one, isn't it, to say that set them back 30 years. So I don't really know, if it was just the violence that they were referring to, or just the fact that, yeah, what they were doing was perhaps too high risk. And again, that's hypocritical, isn't it? You've got one company saying that's too risky, and you've got the rest of the internet saying it wasn't risky enough, widely landing on a crash pad. So you can't win, which is the point, isn't it, that we're trying to make, I think, is that there's a real hypocrisy, whichever way you do it, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's that whole thing of it's setting you as we said earlier, they're setting back the business 30 years, but you've got the talent saying we loved it.
We want to do that. We want to
do that. But it'd be quite interesting to find out exactly who said that they
Yeah.
didn't like it. Like it could have been, it sounds daft, but I could see Vince McMahon saying I loved it, but I could see Pat Patterson going no.
Yeah.
Triple H going I really really liked it, but somebody else like Kevin Dunn, the production company, would say no. It's why don't you like it, and why do you feel it set the company back, the business back 30 years? Because I don't. Because you could sit there and say, well, if you're thinking about setting it back 30 years, have you seen what they're doing in Japan?
Yeah, exactly.
You've got people wrestling and getting hit in the face with pillows. You've got people getting body slammed into child play ball pits and stuff like that. You've got New Japan. You've got Noah. You've got you've got the resurgence of, and I do apologise about this for the name, but there's a guy who is bringing back and wants to bring back death matches, barbed wire death matches in Japan. So clearly there is something there. So if it was really set back, if it was really putting the business back 30 years, would you have people clambering to have that type of content? No. So maybe they're looking at it, maybe it's been taken out of context, as in them saying it put the business back 30 years because WWE are now catered more towards a family audience. And if you look at the cable provider that they're with, you've got Fox, and you've got the USA Network. So yes, they may be playing it at like 8, 9 o'clock at the Watershed, but they're catered more towards the way that WWE used to be, and now they're catering towards a more family audience. Like every time you watch Raw, every time you watch SmackDown or a pay-per-view, the amount of kids that are there. Now, as you've openly said, and you rightly so, and I agree, AEW are more catered towards a more adult audience. Yes, we'll still put stuff on for kids, or kids can still come. It's not one of those you have to be over 16 to come and watch us, but it might be one of those if you're under 16, you need someone with you because it could be a little bit edgy. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, if you like WWE, go watch WWE. If you like AEW, go watch AEW. If you like both, watch both. But as we've discussed off camera, and we've talked about it on with our Brood colleagues on the Turnbuckle Arms podcast previously, it's okay to like more than one product. It's not, no one's gonna tell you off, and it's again, like I said earlier on, it's the one thing about the social media side. It's a really really good thing to boost, but it's very very easy to destroy something. You could be a fan of one thing and everyone jumps on you. It's like, it's okay, but I'd be quite interested to see. Hopefully down the line we'll find out. I'd be really interested to see what aspect and who actually set the business back, because personally I don't think it does. We've seen it. The AEW are hitting over a million, not buy rates, million viewers for their weekly shows. And NXT, again, not putting a damper on anyone because we don't want to besmirch other companies, and not. So there's clearly something there that people are invested in, which is very, very good for AEW going forward, and it'll only ever get better. So yeah, it'd be interested.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's done the business. So the viewing figures for AEW this week dropped back down again, which shouldn't be a surprise, because you've hit a real high there with Blood and Guts, and they were right to like bring a kind of special attraction to it, and it worked. It got the viewers they wanted. It hit a certain number, and yes, it's dropped back off again, which, like I said, I think was natural after hitting such a high mark. But yeah, they are legitimately hitting and consistently hitting figures that will threaten certain other companies, I think, and make them pay attention. So if I was Tony Khan or Cody, I'd be pleased to hear anyone watching it go, well, let's set it back. Hey, you're watching us, you're paying attention, I guess. So yeah, speaking.
We'll just have to see if they bring out RoboCop for Sting next time.
See if they do that as well. And this is the thing, just to follow up on your point, yeah, there's a real diverse choice of wrestling these days, probably more than ever, so you can pick from whatever you want, really. And I don't know about you, Jolly, but I'm a fan of a buffet. I don't complain when I go to a buffet and there's lots of different foods. That's why I go to a buffet. So yeah, for me, we're living in a wrestling buffet right now. I don't want just one food anymore. I want all the food. So we're going to talk about some of the fallout from Dynamite actually, and leading up to Double or Nothing now, which is coming around very quickly, May 30th. And thankfully for me, it's a bank holiday in the UK the next day, so I don't have to book the day off work and I can stay up and watch it, which is great. Double or Nothing is going to be the first time we're putting on a kind of a weekend event. It's going to be like almost a fan fest, like access style event, which is really good. And again, we talked about how, either Double or Nothing or I suppose All Out becomes their WrestleMania almost. So yeah, it's the first time they're putting it up. There's going to be a sold out crowd of 5,000 there, which is really good to see. So coming from Blood and Guts, we had potentially Orange Cassidy lining up to take on Kenny Omega if he could get past Pac, and he didn't, basically. I didn't see this coming, but they've gone with the double kind of finish. Kenny Omega tried to kind of weasel his way out of it by causing a double count out, basically. Now, what apparently happened in the match was that Orange Cassidy got legitimately knocked out at some point. So I think they were
during when Pac delivered the bomb.
Yes.
As soon as he hit the canvas, you could see that he was out of it a little bit.
Hit it.
According to reports, their finish with Don Callis and Omega was supposed to happen regardless of what went on in the ring. They were still always going to set up a triple threat, but it was just that they had to set it up a triple threat a different way than what it should have been.
That's good though, calling it on the fly then, because yeah, I didn't know. I really had a lot of kind of, if I was a betting man, and I am, I would have put a lot of money on just Orange Cassidy versus Kenny Omega. So I was actually really pleased, but yeah, I wasn't sure if this was like an audible that they called on the fly almost, after seeing it. But he did hit that powerbomb with some impact, and yeah, he seems to be okay, Orange Cassidy. And me, I'm actually now looking more forward to that match. Pac deserves the main event spot. Maybe this will be the actual main event. Could be the Stadium Stampede. Who knows? But it'll be great to see the very diverse styles of those three athletes you've got in there. I mean, again, we've talked about this in the last show. It's difficult to see Omega losing, isn't it? At this point, especially in a triple threat, because typically, although the champion doesn't have to be pinned to lose, that also gives them an advantage because, we all know that like typically one of the other guys could take the fall and it wouldn't take any heat off anyone really. So
like Pac smacking Orange Cassidy with a move and then Kenny Omega throwing Pac out. We've seen it many a times, throwing him out the way and getting the pin over Orange Cassidy. Yeah, absolutely. It's one way to keep everyone strong, but without anyone looking actually very weak. So
Omega steals the finish, basically, doesn't he? He takes the credit, he gets the pin for you, right? So, that could be quite good. And then also moving forward, you've had maybe I'll get your thoughts on this. I don't know if you've seen it, but Cody Rhodes on this week's Dynamite and his interesting promo against our countryman Anthony Ogogo, former Olympian, of course, of mixed heritage, I might say, actually, as well, just to make it more interesting. I don't know if you've seen this, Jolly, but again, the internet has exploded with the reaction. I didn't think it was actually that bad. I think it worked in Cody's quite old school in a way. I think it worked, for me. whether or not I maybe want to see this match even more, not really. But yeah, I look forward to seeing Anthony's kind of proper like debut, at a pay per view against Cody. That's a lot of pressure. What do you think about this match? Looking forward to it.
Yeah, obviously following Blood and Guts, we saw Anthony Ogogo crack Cody in the ribs and then lay the Union Jack belt of the flag over top, which obviously I saw the reactions before I actually watched the match.
Oh, right.
So I watched it, and we all know Cody is a very emotional person,
Mm.
as we saw when he was talking about his him and his brother and his dad, and Brandy and his daughter and that. Um, I think it's, and obviously inevitably for one night only is going to be the American Dream, which I think is just, yeah, it's lovely as that. But he's very articulate, and I think that's what helps him.
Mm.
Um,
Silly
and
man,
and
stupid.
and the promo itself, I thought was done very well. The whole thing of, Anthony Ogogo putting down America, but he's coming over here and he's claiming off of the Americans. So it can't be that bad. If he was that bad, we've given him a visa to work over here, so it can't be that bad. If it was, you go back over to the UK, this, that, and the other. Yeah, it. I don't know if I'm into it as much as I should be, because obviously, ultimately, it's Cody and QT Marshall.
Yes, that's the real. That
But
was better, wouldn't it? I would have preferred to see that on pay per view, and we'll get to the tag match. But there's certain matches that sometimes they put on Dynamite, and I think that's really great. But why wasn't that at the pay per view? So yeah, sorry. Please do carry on.
no, it's all right. But and in fact, I actually would have thought that they'd do the whole thing of um, going through every member of the factory,
Yeah,
ultimately leading up to Cody and QT Marshall at All Out or at a special
yeah.
Dynamite show further down the line. It's almost as if they've done it backwards.
I agree, and you're right. Like the factory, they're the heaters, aren't they? We said about before. They're the guys like Aaron Solo. They're the guys to go out there and get beaten by Cody, leading up to the big bad boss, QT Marshall. And you're quite right.
Yeah. Regardless of whether QT Marshall has got the ability to beat him, it doesn't matter. You've gone through everyone, and then you have QT Marshall at the end, but you've got all his factory helping, like how we have with the Good Brothers helping Kenny Omega. Like any faction you would normally have, you've got the other people to help, and that ultimately is QT Marshall knows he's not as good as everyone else, but he's putting himself in a position where he's top dog and he's surrounded by really, really good people. So he knows if once Cody goes through that lot, he can then use them. He could use the three members of the factory to protect him in a way, as in, like if I'm going to wrestle him at Double or Nothing or All Out or All In or whatever, you three are going to be there to protect and make sure that he doesn't beat me or doesn't come anywhere near me, whether it be before the bell, make it a DQ, or anything like that, just to build that momentum for Cody to get to eventually get to QT Marshall at the end, but have all these obstacles in the way to stop him from literally being able to get him into the ring and brave the living daylights out of him. Don't get me wrong. Like we'll talk about with the tag match, I think certain matches were pushed a little bit quicker. As I said, personally for me, the factory, I think they should have done it the other way around. Don't even have Cody on Blood and Guts. Build it up to the first match with the team with that lot, or even on a Dynamite match, have him against Aaron Solo, and then build to the beast, that the really big bear looking guy, and then Anthony Ogogo, and then QT Marshall. That's how I would have had it, because you've got long term. Even if it was only for 4 weeks, even if you were just building it once a week, it doesn't matter. You've built it in a good way, but to have him face QT Marshall first,
Beat him. Yeah.
and then face somebody who's got more pedigree. I don't mean to be besmirch and be not nice to QT Marshall, but you've got Anthony Ogogo, who's got some credibility as being a legit bronze medal winning boxer at the Olympics from from the UK, and obviously he got signed before the pandemic happened, and I just think, like we were saying, that sometimes they don't do it the right way around, or everyone's got an opinion. It's fine, but for me, I just think that they could have done that. They could have done it a little bit better. I just think that you've got rid of the top dog, so now you're carrying it on. Unless they're going to carry it on to the end where QT Marshall faces him again. But would you be more invested in QT Marshall the second time?
Yeah.
Or would you have preferred him to just go through everyone like boss battles and face QT Marshall at the end? Even though, and the whole story behind it could be that we know that QT Marshall isn't that very good, because we know he isn't, because when he's in the ring with Cody lays it on him. But having these other people in his way could almost like lower his health bar if you play it as a video game. So then when he comes, or like a gauntlet match, so then when he comes to QT Marshall, QT Marshall can potentially just crack him one and get the win.
Oh, absolutely. It's what they did with MJF. You know, he had to go through the lashings. He had to go through, this is Cody, the cage match with Wardlow. Yeah, and it's the classic, like you said, you described it brilliantly. It is the boss battle, isn't it? You go through the minions first, you know, you get to the mid-level boss and then you get to the final boss. Yes, I do think they've done this perhaps the wrong way around. And I do think they could have even led up to Double or Nothing and just had QT versus Cody there. I was actually quite invested in the turn from QT, because one, it split up a massive faction in the Nightmare family, a ridiculously sized faction, and then you got two. You know, I quite liked where they were going with that. So they do seem to have pulled the trigger on it a bit too quickly, unless they go back and we end up having like a factory versus family blow off match, you know, which you could have argued could also have been a blood and guts style, I suppose. But we'll see if they build to that now as well. But you're right.
It's interesting to find out what's going to happen, obviously. But again, no matter who faces Cody, that it'll elevate him. So Anthony Ogogo, regardless of his credibility, regardless of his background and history, going up against somebody like Cody will only benefit him.
Oh yeah, Cody doesn't, you know, despite popular opinion, he is very good at elevating talent, and he's not afraid to take losses either. You know, he can. He knows he's not in a position to really compete for these titles. He's more of there as a gateway. You know, sooner or later he'll be on paternity leave. So yeah, whether or not this is his last match for a while, I almost would have had him written off by the factory for an eventual massive return where the fan popularity would have come back to him, you know, as well, because you could argue Cody's stock is a little bit lower in terms of popularity. Some people on the internet have even suggested this is like the kind of heel Cody. So if they ever took it to the United Kingdom, AEW, you know, he would be the opponent for Go-Go and have that against him. I don't know. I think that's probably thinking forward a little too much. But yeah, it's really interesting how they've done it too quickly. I don't think they've messed it up, because I do think there's still some mileage in it. They can come back to QT maybe with the other guys, but yeah, they've certainly done it perhaps not the wrong way, a different way around.
Yeah, I like what you said regarding, you know, there is mileage in it. Having like coming up to having his maternity leave, have him getting attacked by Anthony Ogogo in the factory at Double or Nothing, writes him off then. And then have QT Marshall. It doesn't have to be every week, but every couple of weeks or once a month, and he's just properly sticking it to Cody. And then eventually, whether it be 6 weeks later, whether it be 4 months later, 5 months later, 6 months later, you've got the factory just running roughshod in a way that, you know, well, who's going to stop us, you know? And then Cody has that inevitable comeback, and then has the blow-off match with QT Marshall later on down the line.
Yeah, you could do it.
Like you said, you can do a lot with it. There's a lot of meat to it. It's just, unfortunately, for me, in my opinion, I think actually talking about how you've just said that, I'll go back on what I said and say that, yes, first point, yeah, it might not have been the right way around, but how me and you have just been describing it and how we've talked about it could actually work better. And it actually could be, in essence, the plan all along. I'm not saying that we work for AEW. If we did, it'd be lovely. But it's actually quite quite a unique way of looking at it from what you said, as in like getting him written, building him up, and then he comes back and has that blow off match.
I think so. I mean, you could have a go-go beat him, say like, I've ended the American dream. I'm the American nightmare now. I am the representation of everything you don't want. An immigrant coming in and taking what's yours. It's perfect, isn't it? So I would like to see Go-Go win that match because, I do think it's going to be. Because if he loses it, like you said, that's 2 people down. Cody's 2-0 up against the factory. And, personally, I'd like to see him lose. Let's talk. Well, we spoke about this last time as well, but let's talk briefly about Britt Baker then, coming up against Hikaru Shida, ending what will be a very lengthy AEW women's reign, a very good reign in my opinion, but the writing seems on the wall. We were right jolly about Miro beating Darby Allin, which we can come back to in a second. So we'll be right with our second prediction and say that Britt Baker is going to dethrone Shida. I think we said last time it seems inevitable. Has your mind been changed at all in the last week?
No. I'm still sorry. I don't mean to sound it like I'm being awful, but we've said numerous times that I didn't get Britt Baker from word go when I saw it. But the more and more she's been on TV, the more and more she's been able to have her promos, being able to get that TV time, be able not just to have a match, but able to fill in the between matches for her, especially when she was out injured and everything like that. I'm firmly behind her. And as we said, my opinion hasn't changed. I think as of the end of Double or Nothing at the end of this month, we'll see a new women's champion from Britt Baker, and I think it'd be a good one to put the belt on, because we, including the internet, all stated that Britt Baker should have been champion earlier. Yes. Now, would it have worked the way that it has now? We'll never know. But the way that they've built her, the way that they've built her with Thunder Rosa, the way that they've built her, adding dark elevation matches so she can build up that ranking to get to number one. I think it's very, very well put together. It's kept her strong. But yeah, I think as at the end of that, we're going to have a new champion.
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah, absolutely. She said, I'm the face of this division, and she always has been in a way, isn't she? Like right from day one, Britt Baker, when she was announced, I didn't know a tremendous about her. Shamefully, I probably knew her more as Adam Cole's partner than I did a talent in her own right. But yeah, she has impressed everyone. And we all know that the injury and the heel turn, suggested by Kenny Omega, reportedly, the heel turn, was gold for her. And every time she's got injured or hurt, it's elevated her stock. The time she's bled on camera, she's starting to use that to her advantage. She knows, that it's only going to help her. Yeah, Shida's been great, and I don't mean a disservice to her at all. But it's not like she hasn't been given good opponents, but the storyline she's had are okay. But this one, and there's still a few weeks to build this, it needs to get probably a little more personal. And I want to see Shida's return promo this week now. Dr. Baker had a great promo this week, really solid with JR. Again, he's so good in that position, that sit-down interview. I want to see Shida come out now, have a similar sit-down interview perhaps, and just really say, look, everyone thinks this is inevitable. It's not inevitable to me. I want to see her defend her position, because we all think it. The world thinks that she's going to lose, and it probably will happen. But I want Shida to come back with that fire. So not on my watch, So yeah, a little more time to build this. I think a little bit more from Shida. And for me, I'm probably looking forward to this match the most at Double or Nothing. It might be my top pick for match of the night, I think, actually. So coming full circle now to almost round this off, I want to talk about the rematch between the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle at another Stadium Stampede match. Now, initially, when I heard about this, I was... Well, first of all, I want to tell you my thoughts about the kind of action that led up to it. The Pinnacle was celebrating in the ring. And then, again, don't mean to be negative, but I couldn't help but feel this next segment we'd seen before many times. The Inner Circle came out and sprayed them with basically a kind of water cannon, but it was Chris Jericho's bubbly inside the cannon, and gave him pretty much a bubbly bath. Now, we've seen it before with Beer and Steve Austin and Milk and Kurt Angle. So this was this generation's take on it, I guess. Now, I've got no problem with the heel team saying we don't want to give you a rematch, and they get taunted into giving a rematch per se. But I'm not so sure MJF in the Pinnacle and a Stadium Stampede match. For me, the Stadium Stampede was unique, and it was at a time during COVID where it felt like they were improvising. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know. Like Stadium Stampede was so like organic, and it felt so fresh, and anything could happen in it. I almost don't like the idea of it being a regular stipulation match. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
the rules of a Stadium Stampede, anyone can pin anyone anywhere, I guess, to end the match, or do you just effectively take all your opponents out? And again, it was a special fun match before, and I think they might be making a bit of a misstep by repeating that stipulation. Now, tell me your thoughts about this upcoming rematch.
I agree with you. I think if you're going to keep the Pinnacle strong, the way that they presented them when the Inner Circle came in didn't help them at all. It just made them look silly. I know that obviously the Inner Circle are supposed to be a bit daft at times and this, that, and the other, but this segment didn't make either of them look strong at all. For me, as you said, the whole thing of the using something that has been used twice before. Now, obviously, certain people will go, "I know that. Yeah, that reminds me of this." Certain people are going to be like, "Haha, that was funny."
Yeah.
But for me, and then the way that they goaded MGF, and MGF went no, and then went right. Actually, hang on, I will do this if you do this.
Yeah.
They could have had a better the Stampede match. Is it because of Jericho being injured?
Yeah, good point. And who were they? Is the other question. Yeah.
Because ultimately, I would have seen them just being a standard. I mean, you could turn around and say you've got to build up from the blood and guts. You can't then say, right, well, we'll have a a tag team elimination match, or we'll have a tag team with first fall, because you're going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's if they'd have started with that and built up, then that might be different. But I think you have to go further higher now because other people will be like, oh, well, was that it? And you're only going to do this. But there are certain ways of doing it. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the Inner Circle. I like what they do with them, and I like what Pinnacle, the way that they are standing tall and saying, we are the best, which is why we are called the Pinnacle. I enjoy having all them in there. Every single member of, regardless what people think, every single member in there has got a story to state why they are in the Pinnacle. But do I want a Stampede match? No, I don't. But can you do anything more than to, if you want to call it, do you say beat blood and guts?
Yeah.
But do you have anything that's going to captivate the audience more than just having a tag team match?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going to enjoy watching it. I'm going to enjoy all of it. But whether or not you can actually, they've set the bar that high.
Yeah.
Sorry, that high. They set the bar that high that anything less than that, will it diminish what they've built up beforehand? I don't know. I really don't.
Sorry, I was going to say, yeah, should they have built up to Blood and Guts? Should that have been at the pay-per-view? Could you have had its own pay-per-view with that? We all kind of know that, like, Hell in a Cell kind of matches, they should be the blow-off to a feud.
Yeah.
But maybe this is AEW just doing things differently. What you can have a Stadium Stampede is an awful lot of fun. I could easily see a moment where Sammy is driving like a golf cart and gets his revenge. He's the one behind the wheel this time. And I can see, it reminds me of one of my all-time favorite matches, potentially, which was the Shield at the time versus the Wyatt family. It was an all-out brawl. It was all over the arena almost, and I would like to see that kind of Stadium Stampede where they're not completely all spread out. I don't want it to be a bunch of fun spots, because I think my criticism of this match coming up and this promo was that this is a blood feud, and it was very serious before. We all remember when the Inner Circle first got their revenge on the Pinnacle. Yeah, glass was smashed. All right, heads were put down toilet, but it looked legit. They were cracking heads and doors. It was brilliant. And then Blood and Guts equally almost raise that level of violence. So to go to a match that I think might be filled with perhaps some comedy spots or yeah, I worry that it's almost too spread out. You know, it's not intense, and perhaps I would have seen, yeah, preferred to see a blood and guts style match at the pay per view as the continuation of this feud. But who knows? It'll be wacky and it'll be wild. I know that. You know, last time we had Hangman on a horse. You know, but I just don't think it's going to beat that first Stadium Stampede match because it will either risk parody of it or I just don't think you'll be able to come up with anything as fun. And yeah, I almost think the stipulation lends itself to a bit more something a bit more crazy and wacky than it does a blood feud. So I have some concerns about that. But like you said, where do you go? You know, how do you top that? You know,
I mean, like apparently Jericho has said that this isn't the end. It's going to carry on for at least maybe 4 or 6 months. Now, whether that be Pinnacle losing or whether that be the Inner Circle losing, and then it still carries on, I don't know. But apparently, unless it changes, this match between the both isn't the end of their feud.
And it won't be because you're going to have a rubber match, aren't you? It's 1-0 up to the Pinnacle, arguably, right now. We also know that it's one, you know the Inner Circle probably going to even the score. Two, you probably think they're not going to split up. And again, not to be negative, but I don't like that stipulation. We saw it with SCU. And yes, that time, like perhaps it was a little bit predictable. I do want to talk about this. But yeah, I don't like that stipulation because it almost gives away the end result, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah,
we don't.
you have to deliver.
Yeah. And you don't see the Inner Circle splitting and you don't see them losing 2 in a row. Do you? So again, sometimes that stipulation that's meant to cause a bit of drama for experienced fans like us, I think we all know that's not going to happen. You know, we know that there's money in this field, so it will keep going. So very quickly to divert back to the tag team scene. We saw an absolutely tremendous match this week between the Young Bucks and SCU, and I tweeted out on a social that I thought this was one of the best Dynamite matches in a long time. The stipulation being the titles were on the line, but if SCU lost, they would have to split up. So it was titles versus career, and sadly, that's what happened. They went out with a bang, and I know both Kazarian and Christopher Daniels said they will carry on in AEW regardless. But it was the end of one of my favorite tag teams and a fantastic tag team overall. We don't want to go into the history. You can look that up for yourself. But Kaz and Dan had some.
Was it something like 30 odd matches that they've been part of? And singles matches, as in like tag matches, they've been 3 apiece. So this is basically the rubber match. They've been immense matches between them, both teams. Down
They tore it down. You know, it was great. False finishes. It was the right finish, of course. You know, the Bucks still kind of cheated to win. Ultimately, the Bucks parodying the Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, sorry, I love you moment. You know, it was great. Like, the Bucks know what they're doing right now. This is the best Young Bucks we've seen in a while. SCU, yeah, aged like a fine wine. We knew they were going to deliver. But again, you could argue that they weren't going to lose those belts. They were definitely going to split up anyway. But again, good storyline. But again, could we have had this at the pay-per-view? I would have paid money to watch that match, even knowing the conclusion. I knew it would be a great match. So I don't know what
No, absolutely. Sorry. Yeah, I would have had the build up because they had the little promo video of Kazarian and Daniels talking about them both, talking about the Young Bucks. Say, we've been together for years. We've known you. We're friends. We've travelled with you. And you've now done this, and there's nothing wrong with building up to Double or Nothing because it means that you're more invested in it. And anybody that's watched wrestling knows that sometimes it works really, really well if you invest and draw out a storyline. It doesn't always work. It really, really doesn't. But if you do it right, that the Young Bucks and SCU was actually a really, really good way of building the story to Double or Nothing as your blow-off match, because ultimately you're doing it on a pay-per-view show. They're not going to take anything away from it being on pay-per-view. They'll still deliver what they delivered on Dynamite. It's just you could have Kazarian versus Matt, and then Daniels versus Nick, and then the following week they switch over. One of them gets a win, one of them gets a win. So you've got that, like, if you want to call it the rubber match, and then it builds. So it'd be 2 apiece or 1 apiece or whatever, and then it builds to them the blow-off match at Double or Nothing, where inevitably SCU would lose, and it would, as you said, it would build that momentum. It would. I mean, you'd still be vested, but it would feel more than just they've just won a four-way match. Not saying that match wasn't good, because it was very, very good at Blood and Guts, but now you've got the blow-off match the week after on free TV. Now, a lot of people say don't give away your best matches on free TV because you lose money. It doesn't always work like that, because sometimes especially if you've got a good product and you've got fantastic wrestlers, every week is always going to feel like a pay-per-view. Like the whole thing that we were talking about with their special named brand Dynamite shows. But yeah, I would have thought that they would have pushed it a little bit more to. There's nothing wrong with pushing out a couple of weeks and moving everything else just a little bit further on. Now, I don't know, because obviously we've now got Young Bucks versus Kingston and Moxley at Double or Nothing. Now, without actually looking online, I don't know what the next pay-per-view is going to be. Now, if the next pay-per-view is going to be in August, I can understand why they've brought that forward.
Yeah.
But I'd have also liked to have seen SCU have their retirement tag match, as in SCU being together, like you said, on a pay-per-view show. But especially in front of 5,500, you'd have had people applauding. You'd have had everyone invested in it, and it would have just felt a little bit more. But regardless of what happened, as you said, the match was fantastic. You knew what was going to happen. It was just, would they do it? And he's like, will they actually do it? And then you go, oh, they are actually going to do it. But as you said, they're not retiring. They're just split up from the team itself. They're not. Now, I'd be quite interested if they actually play the SCU card as, yes, they're not SCU, but it doesn't necessarily mean they can't team.
Yes, that's true. They can help. They could come and support.
Like the whole thing of Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa. They're not a tag team, but they wrestled together. It'd be quite interesting. Or, as you said, it could be Daniels is taking more of a background backstage role, which is what he does, and have Kazarian on that run, which would be quite cool if he runs through a potential shot at Miro with the TNT title. So yeah.
Yes. Very conveniently moved me on to my final one I wanted to predict, which was the TNT title. So there's a few more matches I've seen announced for it, but confirmed is likely to be a TNT title match. So very briefly, we had Miro against Darby Allin not very long ago now, and it was a great match. We predictably quite right predicted that Miro would take the TNT title from a fantastic champion in Darby Allin. Darby gave it his all, as he always does. There was a fantastic spot where he kind of almost threw himself in the rope and ping-balled like almost off Miro, like the solid wall. It was like throwing a tennis ball against the ball, and it bounced off him. It was fantastic to watch. There was a lovely emotional moment where Sting gave Darby like a fist bump. He looked out of it, Darby, and he was like against the rope, looking at him as this father figure that he's become, and he's like, just just do your best, kid. And he knew he was going out. Really great win for Miro. He's kind of got what a lot of people would say he should have had before. Hopefully he can have a lengthy run now. We all know that AEW isn't keen on Hot Potato in the title. He's going to keep it. But after the match, we have Lance Archer, who I had almost in my mind been a bit confused and criticised about Archer's involvement with Sting and Darby previously, but now I kind of see that it's about respect, and Archer came out to defend and run off Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. Possibly then we're going to get a Lance Archer, I know you're a fan, versus Miro at Double or Nothing. But as we said previously, you've also got the X factors that are Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, or even Sting himself. So tell me, what you think. Do you think it's going to be the Murder Hawk Monster versus Miro?
I think if we are going to get a match at Double or Nothing, I think, depending on how Darby is, I think they're just sitting at the moment on the fence. If Darby is cleared and he's okay, I think it's going to be Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky versus Lance Archer and Darby Allin.
Okay, interesting. So Miro not in there. Interesting.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that Miro hasn't got a match. That just means that, because to be honest, I would have Lance Archer away from Miro, because
Yeah.
again, as we've talked about before when we talked about a previous episode with Darby Allin, Darby Allin's knocking all these giants down. Now I would have, there is enough talent to build Miro as a monster. You've got a lot of, I mean, you've got the Seidel brothers. You've got, look at everyone that's wrestling on Dark and Elevation. You've got, he could face the Varsity Blondes, and he could face the Lucha brothers. There's so much talent in there that you could keep Lance away from it. Not because he's not good, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, because if he beats Lance Archer, it's like, it's that boss battle thing. You've beaten the top person. Everyone else is, yeah.
And if Lance loses, sorry to interrupt you, can he have another loss? We've said before, haven't we, about Archer's had quite a few big losses, pay-per-view losses. You're right. If he loses now, again, too soon, yeah, I think you're spot on. That's actually a really good shout, I think, to keep away from that and build Miro up a little before leading to a Lance Archer, maybe even a win, ultimately, because a lot of people want to see Archer claim the big prize. He certainly earned it. I think Miro deserves this run as well. So, yeah, I like your take on that. That'd be.
Or the other one would be, have, if Lance Archer does face Miro, because we know how, especially with him putting out Kip Sabian,
Yes,
could have him going overboard and then they disqualify him. So Lance actually doesn't win the belt. He wins the match by DQ. And by doing that, you've kept both of them, again, as we talked about before, you're keeping them both really, really strong, but you're keeping the belt on Miro.
Yeah.
And it doesn't lower the stock in Lance Archer in any way, shape, or form. And then it could build to another match further down. But as it stands at the moment, if I would go with a tag match, because it keeps all four relevant, especially with what they've been doing over the last 3-4 weeks, even longer than that with Ethan with Scorpio Sky since the TNT title match against Darby Allin when he snapped, and it's built from there. But I would say keep it as that. If Darby can wrestle, even if it's one of those where he does minimal, but let Lance Archer do the majority of the work, it keeps him still relevant in the match and in the show and in the storyline. Have Miro face somebody else. It doesn't have to it doesn't have to be an open challenge.
It doesn't defense.
The open challenge thing was Brody Lee, Cody, and Darby Allin. Miro can turn around and say, "I'm not doing an open challenge. No one's worthy. Why should I let anybody just be able? You have to prove yourself to come and step up with me. Why should I just let any Tom, Dick, and Harry be able to walk up and say, I want to wrestle a match?" Or the alternative side of it, which has worked very well when you're building a monster, is you get him to face lots of different people. Maybe not on. You might even have him just cut a promo on Double or Nothing and not actually wrestle, and just build. He's facing loads of different people, build into that inevitable match against Lance Archer. 1, you're getting TV exposure for the TNT title. 2, you're continuing to make Miro look a monster, no matter whether he's facing somebody like Billy Gunn or as I said, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be somebody that there is no way they're going to win, or he's got more of a caliber, like I know it sounds daft, like Cody type of thing.
Yes.
You could have the run of the litter of everyone in AEW, but then keep certain people away from him to be that inevitable. I'll step up to you. You think you can beat all this lot? Or even have Lance Archer doing it side by side.
Yes,
he's doing it, trying to outdo each other, and then ultimately they face each other in a match where they both lock horns, and then potentially either takes the belt off of Miro, or Miro wins by DQ, just to show that it's not about winning, it's about, I'm the best man and I am the stronger of you, and I don't need compassion. The whole thing of the respect thing, you could use that storyline and say, I don't have respect for anyone, I'm this person, I'm the champion, and I'll do whatever it needs doing to win, even if it means getting a DQ, because I've still got the belt. It doesn't matter whether I lose, I've still got the belt. You can't take that away from me, but I'm ultimately the biggest thing. And you could have that sat, and then you've got Kenny Omega, who is this cocky, belt collecting heel, who, as we've said on a previous episode, is bigger than both AEW and Impact. And ultimately, Miro becomes the face of AEW with the TNT Championship, which is obviously why TNT made the title, and have him be the prominent, dominant person on weekly TV. And Kenny Omega doesn't even need to be on TV. Have him as a main attraction, like we talked about before, but have Miro be the one that people tune in to see, because it's like, who's he going to face this time? And even if it's a matter of he dominates people and squashes them, or somebody catches him off guard, he still wins. But it's like, how dare he try and think? How dare he think he can beat me? And then proper lay into him like a. Sorry, I don't mean to bring up an analogy from someone like the Brock Lesnar type of style thing. Have him be like, how dare you? Do you know who I am? I'm the face of this company, and you should all be watching me. I'm the champion. Don't ever think that you can ever come to my level. So yeah.
I really like that. I said before I was a fan of belts being defended on pay-per-views, but the TNT title is arguably an exception. It's almost a TV title, much like the WCW TV title was, back in the day. And it is the TNT title, which is the network. So yeah, we don't have to see him defend at Double or Nothing. You'd end up with 4 tag team matches potentially, or 4 belts on the line. I mean, I'm not sure about the Bucks, but yeah, it doesn't always have to be a kind of Night of Champions style, like every belt defended. The belt always doesn't have to be the star.
Yeah.
So
have an exhibition match. Just to show you. Like at the moment, if you don't mind, I'll run down the card of what we've got for Double or Nothing anyway. So we've got Kenny Omega defending against Cassidy and Pac. We've got Shida versus Baker. We've got Cody versus Antonio Gogo. Christine Cage and Matt Sydal both have entered the Casino Battle Royal. And then we've got Hangman Page versus Brian Cage. That's what we've got so far. So at the moment, we have got 5 matches scheduled.
Need a few more.
As of right now.
Yeah.
But again, you've got the Casino Battle Royal is going to take up quite a bit of time, because you've got entrants coming in. And as you said, there's still room for more matches, whether they want to go 2.5 hour match. 2.5 hour show where they're giving enough time to everyone. Because the last thing you want to do is give what potentially is going to be a good match, like 5-6 minutes. Each match there potentially could have a 10 to 15 minute match, and look very, very, very good. Especially like I'm going to drop this one, like the Moxley IWGP US title match that he previously on. Sorry, that was on the Dynamite that's just been on. I thought that were amazing, and the fact that both of them respectfully bow to each other, and it was just brilliant, and it was just a typical Japanese brutal match.
It was absolutely
very good.
A lot of respect shown. The guy Moxley, yeah, it's quite the history with, and I know Moxley had almost asked for that match. He had said, a year previously to that, and he didn't think it was going to happen. He said he put it out into the ether, just hoping it would manifest and come back to itself. But he didn't think it was going to happen, and it has. And back to your point about Miro and to compare him to Moxley, yeah, we don't always have to see Moxley defend his belt, and we don't always have to see him fighting members of the elite, and I think that's the benefit of Moxley, isn't it? He's got 2 battles to fight all the time. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't always have to be about the belt. It can be about something personal. And we all know that belts, yes, they represent, they mean a lot to the talent at the top, but ultimately they don't really mean anything. And some of the best matches have come without a title. We all know that. And some of the best matches are typically because you don't spend then your time being concerned about the outcome and what would happen afterwards. You get to enjoy the match as is, because you don't worry about it, do you? You're not concerned about it. Which leads me finally on to Brian Cage and Hangman Page. little bit surprised to see this match announced. I know we talked about that was great that Brian Cage beat Hangman, gave a bit of stock back to Team Taz, stopped Hangman's almost inevitable run, put it in a bit of jeopardy there, So quickly tell me, because I know we want to round this up soon, quickly tell me your thoughts about Hangman and Cage. Do you see Hangman getting the W back, I guess?
For me, I was surprised that they were going to do a this type of match at Double or Nothing. Again, as we talked about before, where the whole thing of, the way that they built Cage to win against, I'm going to say Hangman because Cage and Page just throws me out. The way that they build Hangman to be how he is, and the way that they've done Brian Cage was a very, very good way of beating him. He's always playing the back foot, and ultimately, I would have liked to have, I don't know, I would have liked, because he doesn't defend the FTW belt.
Never.
So I would have liked to have seen something there.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, Hangman will get the win. He'll get the win because it carries on that momentum. Like obviously we saw the little promo he did with Dark Order on this past week's Dynamite. But yeah, I think it should be okay. I think it should be all right. I think Hangman will get that win to build that momentum again. But whether or not there'll be any shenanigans in it, I don't know. I honestly, I'm not sure. I think the way that they're trying to build it is that he's going to be able to wrestle him without being have any interference.
Yeah, I agree. It's Page again seems inevitable. He will get back on his track to Omega. To be honest, this is quite similar to the match he had at last, which was against Big Money Matt Hardy. All right, there was the stipulation of the earnings, but they have to keep Hangman kind of hot and have these big wins, but again they need to keep him away from Omega long enough. So it really leads us back to this path, doesn't it, of Hangman versus Omega. At what point will they get to that? How do they keep him going without derailing his momentum? And because wins and losses are supposed to mean something in AEW, it's very challenging. So yeah, I agree completely. And it doesn't feel like a pay-per-view caliber match because they've had little time to build it up. But as we've just said, it doesn't always have to have that long build to make it. And it's clearly a way to fill out the undercard a little, with what could be a good match. But it's also unlike AEW to not put anything into these matches, and not have any plans coming out of them either. You'd always see something spiral out of it. So we shall see what happens with that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the show. So I think perhaps it needs maybe one more match. I always think sometimes pay-per-views need one more match to really take it over the edge to make it great. But I think my only concern is how perhaps predictable the finishes might be, or at least the outcomes, not the finishes, but who wins. You could look down that, couldn't you, and almost pick a winner out of all of them and not really feel like they weren't safe bets. Is that how you feel at the moment, looking down that?
Yeah, but you've listening to what you've just said, are we doing it because of we've been watching wrestling for over 30 years? It's if you were new to this product, you'd be fine, but we know how wrestling works, and it's very, very rare that, especially if you look at this card, it'll be very, very rare that you'll get it wrong, the outcome.
Yeah.
But that's like with any event. We're at a point now where we can almost guess. You can't even put money on it because bookies will be sat there going, no, because we're going to lose out because we know what's going to be the outcome. Yeah. So, but yeah, the only person at the moment, because obviously they haven't announced everyone. The only match that I don't know is obviously Casino Battle Royal.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, with the two people that have announced, you'd go with Christine Cage.
Yes, you would, yeah.
But we don't know who's going to be in the rest of it, so that's the only match that I'm sat there going, I'm not sure yet. I'm speculating who's going to be in it, but yeah, everyone else, I think, I'm like you said, I think we pretty much know which way it's going to go, who's going to get the wins and who's going to get the losses. So
it's an excellent point. You're right. Your experience teaches you that. We could still be surprised. I know neither of us predicted Adam Page losing to Brian Cage last week, so you never know, do you? And you're right. There'll be some surprises. Typically, these ladder matches now, they do seem a portal for people to come into, a great way to introduce new talent. Hopefully they can do it. I've said before, I enjoy these like battle royales and these casino ladder matches, but I've yet to have one that really take my breath away and really think, okay, that's a solid ladder match. So this could be the one. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure of AEW. I just don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't really look forward to these like I maybe would have done in the past. But yeah, I'm up for being surprised. So there's going to be quite a few matches on it, which is good because I worried it looked a bit thin. Maybe some of the things are predictable. I'm looking forward to what's basically good matches, and I guess my point is, I don't really care about the outcomes, but I am looking forward to a night of good quality outcome. I'm sorry, matches.
Yeah,
we always think Kashida's going to be good, doesn't it?
See, are you invested in it?
Yeah.
That's basically. It doesn't matter who's wrestling. It doesn't matter who wins and who loses. It's just have they got you? Have they hooked you enough for you to be invested, or are you just going to be like, meh?
Yeah, it depends, doesn't it? Some people like the outcomes and story based. Some people like the action, and I guess I fall somewhere in between. But if you want a good night of good solid matches, yes, absolutely, I think it will deliver. But if you want, perhaps unpredictable outcomes, and maybe not, But well, who knows? I live and wait to be surprised, I guess. So, with that being said, we're going to take this home now. I think, we almost got it to hour and a half mark exactly, which would be great. But yeah, do you want to sign us off with a social?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as ever, thank you for joining us for this special AEW Blood and Guts review. As we said at the beginning of the show, we thought it wouldn't be doing it any justice, just doing a 5-10 minute thing, as it was something that was bigger than the show. It was reactions, it was everyone getting involved, and also obviously our opinion on what's going to happen at the Double or Nothing. So as always, you're more than welcome to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter and we're on Instagram at Bear Chocky T, and you are, by all means, put your suggestions in for what you thought about the Blood and Guts event, what you're looking forward to at the Double or Nothing show, and even who you think is going to win or lose, or what you think is going to happen with Miro, or any storylines that's going forward. What are you happy with? What have you given up on? What would you like to happen? So yeah, absolutely. And as my co-host Big Chocky T says, thank you very much for joining us for this special episode. As ever, you can find us, as well as all our fantastic friends, on the Johnner's podcasting network, where, as we said, you'll find an array of diverse material on there from some fantastic people. So please go check them out. And as I said, from Bear and Big Chocky T, we thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.